Hey everybody, what's going on? It is James here with Crypto Common Sense, and I have a Bitcoin slash cryptocurrency market update for January the 10th, 2022. I'm going to cover quite a bit in this video. I'm going to talk a little bit about where I've been, talk a little bit about my plans for this year, and the markets in general. So before I jump into the content, do me a huge favor, hit the thumbs up button. Make sure to subscribe to the channel if you have not already. And make sure to check the description for a link where you can join Patreon. Prices are going to be increasing this year, so this will be one of your last opportunities to join for that special discounted rate. And by the way, just to be clear, anybody that joins at that rate will be grandfathered in and won't be subject to future rate changes. So first things first, I apologize. It's been quite a while since I've done a video. That was not on purpose. I actually got sick. The whole family's been sick. We seem to be passing something around. I don't know whether it's COVID or not. I was not tested. My wife wasn't tested. And my daughter just got tested yesterday, and we're waiting for the results on it. But I did get sick with something, whatever it was, I don't know. But it ended up turning into pneumonia. And so I was down for about 14 days with pneumonia. And I'm still recovering. So I'll do my best to get through this video without hacking and coughing, and of course if I do, I'll do my best to edit those out. So if once in a while I sound like I'm choking or something, or getting ready to choke, it's because I'm trying not to cough. Alright, so that's where I've been. The markets have been pretty brutal in my time off the last couple of weeks, because when I say I've been off, I have not been trading, I haven't been doing anything. I spent close to a week literally just laying in bed. So it was pretty severe. But the first chart that I want to take a look at today is actually this chart. This was a chart that I posted almost 2 months ago now, back in November, and it's when I did a video talking about gauging an asset strength versus the market as a whole. So trading relative strength, and I don't mean RSI, but I mean actual relative strength of one asset versus the market as a whole, or at least a specific sector. And of course, if you've been watching this channel a while, you know that I view Bitcoin as a tech asset, just another tech asset, nothing special. And so I wanted to measure Bitcoin's performance versus the US 100, which is basically the futures for like the tech sector. Okay, so this was the chart that I posted up. Of course, some people liked that chart if they were bearish or if they wanted to go short. Other people didn't like that chart. Some people were fairly malicious about it. That's fine. People have their own opinion. Everybody's entitled to their opinions. But obviously, hindsight being 2020, we can see this chart has played out very well so far. At the time, it was up around 3.62 versus the US 100. Since then, all right, so I had to pause the video to cough, but since then we can see that it's dropped from up around that 3.62 level all the way down to, it's currently sitting right around 2.7 versus the US dollar itself. Bitcoin is down about 30, a little over 30% from when I made that post. So obviously that would have been a very good place to either short Bitcoin or at the very least sell Bitcoin in an effort to buy back Bitcoin cheaper. So either one of those would have been a really good plays back in November. But the question now becomes, what do we do now? That move is played out, so to speak. Do I still believe that this is going to go lower? Is it going to go back up? I mean, what's happening now? Well, if you look at this chart was hypothesizing that we could be in a bubble versus the tech sector. And if that's the case, then of course, complacency, we're moving down. That means that we're not even yet to the anxiety phase. So if it does play out like a bubble, then yes, there's a lot more downside to come. I do believe that's what's happening. I can pull up some other charts, which I'll do real quick to kind of illustrate this point. So again, these charts I'm going to be pulling over from my Discord, in this case, my Patreon channel, and they are older charts. They're from over a month ago, but it's perfectly fine because I still believe that they're valid. So we had this 3 peaks in a domed house potential pattern. Back when I posted this a month ago, I felt like this could potentially be leg 26 with a move up to the leg 27 and then a down move incoming. The 27 was supposed to go back up to the top of the 15 back here. So I hypothesized if that happened, it would probably come back up to this level around 52K and then more downside. And that's literally what Bitcoin did. If we take a look at the Bitcoin chart. So it came down, popped back up literally to 52K, right back to this level back here. Okay, right in that zone, and then down she went. So that does look a lot like a three peaks in a domed house pattern. It also resembles distribution. So if we look at Wyckoff logic, I felt like we could potentially be somewhere in this midpoint here. Okay, I still think that is potentially the case. I still think that we could be, most of the way through phase B of distribution. And if so, then we should have a move up before the ultimate markdown phase begins. Maybe a move back up even, right now nobody's expecting it, or a lot of people are kind of bearish or leaning to more downside. And so it wouldn't surprise me to see this market move back up to the mid 50s, even potentially high 50s, and really squeeze bears before a markdown phase kicks off. Now, obviously, nothing is guaranteed, and there is a lot of weakness in the market right now, so we need to keep an eye on that and not be over exuberant. But that is personally, what I would expect if this was distribution, is I'd actually expect still another leg up. When I say a leg up, I don't mean past the all-time high. That's potential. If we got an up thrust after distribution, we could actually take this out and then melt down. But as weak as the market is, and as weak as the stock market has been showing itself lately, it seems unlikely. It seems more likely that if we do get a move up, probably be in those mid 50s type of range. So let's look at an actual chart itself instead of looking at old screenshots. Let's kind of talk about what we have here. So the biggest problem that we have on this chart is we do have a head and shoulders. We've got our left shoulder here, we've got a head here, we've got a wonky right shoulder here, and of course our neckline is right down around this area. So what I had told Patreon and Discord a few days ago was I would view this as a line in the sand, right? This down around this level, around 40K or so. That level needs to hold so that we can get that move back up, right? Potentially back up to those mid 50s, even high 50s type of thing. Ideally, what I'd like to see is a move that would come all the way back up to this area up here, right? Retest this midpoint, this pivot point here. And then if we're going to get a bear market, I'd like to see a failure at that point, and then we finally enter that markdown phase. That's really what I'd like to see. I'd like to see this be a fake head and shoulders that traps bears and then pushes back up. And the main reason is so that would allow me to initiate some nice positional shorts, which again, I'm not a huge fan of positional shorts, but in this case, they would make sense. And also it would allow me to unload some of the crypto that I haven't yet sold. Okay, so that's kind of a scenario that I would prefer. Now, the other scenario, of course, is that this head and shoulders actually confirms, takes out that neckline, and that would be a pretty nasty ordeal because that would give us a breakdown target down around 16,000 or so. Pull this down, right? That would put us way back down around this area. Actually, excuse me, be down around 10K. Okay, if you measure that head and shoulders from the neckline here to the top and pull it down, and just to double check, because that for some reason I was thinking it was 16K, so I'll double check that. So we'll copy that and paste it over. No, I guess it really is down around 10K. Of course, 10K is the level that I'm looking for. Ultimately, that's where I think Bitcoin is headed long term. And I say long term, I don't mean that's the highest it'll ever be again. I mean, I think that's where it will actually move back to before we can start looking for any type of bottoms. Again, longer picture stuff, 6 months, 12 months, maybe even 18 months into the future on that type of stuff. But, it's important to remember that Bitcoin historically has always retraced between 84 and 95% during bear markets. And stocks aside for just a second, if we do have another bear market, that top, if we did retrace 84%, which is what we retraced in the 2018 bear market, that's your 84% drop. It puts Bitcoin down around 10.8K. If we get a deeper cut, like we got in previous bear markets earlier in Bitcoin's history, then of course a 90% drop will put it at 6,400, and a 95% drop put it down around 3,600. And I know these numbers seem absurd and seem ridiculous, but remember, Bitcoin has always existed during a global bull market in stocks, right? Even that weird 2020 crash was really not an extended bear market. It was just a blip, and the Fed came in, saved the day and propped the markets back up, started injecting liquidity into the markets, and it went right back up. But the Fed's not prepared to do that again, right? The Fed's talking about raising interest rates, and that's why we're seeing this negative impact on stocks, where a lot of stocks, especially the tech stocks, are really selling off heavily, which we'll look at in just a second. So if we don't have the Fed to save the day, then this could be an actual bear market in stocks, which means that we could see a deeper bear market or a deeper crypto winter than what a lot of people are expecting. Okay, so keep that in mind. I know how people's emotional cycles work, and I know that it's easy to say, oh, $10,000 Bitcoin, that's never going to happen. We were just at 70,000 a few months ago. But keep in mind that when Bitcoin was at 20,000, people felt the same way about $3,000 Bitcoin. That was an 84% drop. And in the summer of 2019, when I was calling for $4,000 Bitcoin, again, Bitcoin was almost 14,000. People thought it was ridiculous. They just thought it was a pipe dream that Bitcoin would ever go below 10,000 again, much less $4,000. But then, of course, that's exactly what it did, back down to 3,800, because markets typically will move between levels of liquidity or levels of support and resistance. And in this case, we can put a volume profile on this chart, and, well, it's not the one I'm looking for. I'm looking for the built-in. So we'll do visible range, right? If we put a volume profile in there for the entire time that Bitcoin's been on Coinbase, of course, we do get a point of control down around 1,500, but we really get a major leg of support or liquidity right around this $11,000 to $12,000 area. And that's really what I would expect to happen, is for Bitcoin to come back down and retest this ledge at some point in the future. All right. Now, again, if stocks end up being really, really bad, is it possible that we actually come all the way down and fill in this gap? It is possible. It wouldn't be all that absurd. And I do think it would be a buying opportunity, even for somebody that's not the biggest fan of Bitcoin like myself. I do think that there would be some opportunity there. So let's take a quick look, and it's going to be super quick. Let's take a look at some of the stocks. So this is the US 100. It's a monthly chart. We can see that obviously January has been pretty bloody so far, so that's something that we want to keep an eye on. If we take a look at a daily chart, basically this morning it did come down and hit the bottom of this channel that I had drawn on there. So we want to watch and see if it can break out of this channel. It is really in a downtrend, in my opinion, right, making lower lows here. So we really want to see the stock market take out this high back from the last week of December. And then if it does, then maybe we can get some more uptrend on the stocks, which should pull crypto up with it. But if this does continue a downtrend, of course, we've seen that Bitcoin is correlated to the stock market, and it's probably going to move down with it. So that's just something to keep an eye on. I'm not going to go through every single stock today or every single market. The US 30 obviously had a rough sell-off, but this is technically a higher high, so it does not look as bad as the US 100. The US 500, same thing. This is technically a higher high. So these are a series of higher lows still. If we look at the spread between stocks, I think I've got the spreads on here. All right, so this is the Dow Jones Industrial Average ETF versus the NASDAQ ETF. This is a bit concerning because this was the .com bubble back here, and we can see that the spreads did hit that same level, and they're now bouncing off of it. So this was the tech bubble popping, and we could be seeing a repeat of that. So this is something I want to keep an eye on. This is the SPY versus the QQQ. This again was the .com levels. In this case, we actually went even lower than that. So we can see that the tech stocks have really gotten away from themselves and become, pretty severely overvalued. Another good example of this is we look at some of these funds like the ARK fund, which was, the darling of the markets. Cathie Wood was everywhere you looked. the last 12 months. I don't understand why her fund performed horribly last year, but they took some big gambles, and from March of 2020 up through February 2021, the fund went almost straight up, yada, yada, yada. That's, when you gamble, sometimes you win, right? But since that peak, it's currently pulled back almost 50%. Last year, the performance of this fund was absolutely trash. The ETF last year from open to close lost 25%. And so far this year, from the open to the current price, it's down 11%. So you would have been better off sitting in cash than putting money in this ETF, which is, I don't know how you managed to perform that poorly in this type of market conditions, but they pulled it off. And then you look at other stocks, like, of course, Michael Saylor's stock. He's a lot of people's hero in crypto because he keeps buying the dip and buying the dip, buying the dip. What I would say to people is, what happens when Michael Saylor decides to sell some of his crypto? He now owns enough crypto that he can single-handedly move the price of Bitcoin. That's not decentralization. That's a major problem. But if you look at his stock, of course, from the 2000 dot-com bubble, his stock is currently down 85% still. But if you look at it from the 2021 high, his stock is currently down about 63%. So again, just a stock that got completely ahead of itself, totally overvalued, and it's really been moving sideways now for about a year, close to a year. And that's the same thing with Bitcoin. People keep screaming about this bull market, this bull market, this bull market, right? People give me a lot of grief when I talk about the fact that it's not a bull market. But the irony is, this price in January of 2022 was actually at the same level that it was in January of 2021. So why is price the same today that it was a year ago? You tell me, right? That is not a bull market, okay? That is a ranging market, okay? It's just moving sideways, and it has not yet picked a direction that it wants to move in. If you look at a monthly chart, Bitcoin is technically still in an uptrend, okay? You've got your higher high up here, and you do have a potentially higher low down here. So this is still technically an uptrend on a monthly chart. Keep that in mind. Now, if you flip over to a weekly chart, that's not the case. So on a weekly chart, we can see, obviously, we have the same head and shoulders. We can see that we broke out of this rising wedge, which is a bearish pattern. We can see that we are underneath the 19-week moving average, which is now curling down. By the way, that's up around 52K right now, so that could get retested before more downside. All that is true, but again, I'm still watching this same channel, right? We had a touch point here, we had a touch point here, we have a touch point here, and a touch point here. So I guess I was saying it's not in an uptrend. It's really not, but I still view this as an upward channel, okay? I still think it's entirely possible that we get that one last move up, maybe to 52K, 50K, up around this level, maybe up around this level around high 50s. All those are potential, and we could even get that crazy UTAD that maybe goes all the way back up and tests the top of this channel before it finally falls out of bed. Overall, yes, I expect $10,000 to $12,000 Bitcoin, right? Our long-term trend line's way down here, but I'm not ruling out a move up before it happens, because look at the weekly. It's sitting down right around the bottom of that bear market box. On the weekly, it's very rare for this to break out of that. It happened in March of 2020, which marked an amazing buy opportunity, and it happened back in November of 2018, which also marked an amazing buy opportunity. But for the most part, it stays above the bottom of that box. So I do think it's very possible that we're going to get a bounce up and then more downside. Same thing on a 3-day chart. We can see that we're sitting down around the bottom of that bear market box. We can see that over the summer, that's where it consolidated before moving up from around 30K to 69K. We can see that in 2019, it continued to find support in that area, slipped outside of it in March of 2020, was an amazing buy opportunity, and again, slipped outside of it in November of 2018. But for the most part, it stays in that box. So I do think that Bitcoin is due for some type of relief move up. I don't think it's going to be a new leg up that continues some big uptrend, but I do think that we have some upside due, and I do think that a lot of times You know, the big players love to use these patterns like a Head and Shoulders to fake people out. They grab the liquidity there. You've got retail, you know, going short and selling right into this, you know, whales buying and longing. You get to pump up, and then they unload up here in short. So that's kind of what I'm seeing. All right. That being said, I am going to wrap the video up there. I hope you did enjoy it. Make sure you give it a thumbs up. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, and make sure you check the description for a link where you can join Patreon. Like I said, I am going to be increasing the price of that this year. I'm not going to continue doing it for $7 a month. It's just not worth the effort. But if you join now, you can lock in that discount. Also, please remember that I am some guy sitting in a spare bedroom, which means that nothing in the video is financial advice. You should always go out and do your own due diligence and seek out professional financial advice from a licensed financial advisor before making any type of investment in cryptocurrency, the stock market, precious metals, or Forex. All right, this is James with Crypto Common Sense. Thanks for watching. And as always, please remember to trade safe.